Hi, I'm Jeannie Wilson, and this is the reading of Mick Harte Was Here by Barbara Park, a novel. Chapter 1, Mick. Let me just say right off the bat, it was a bike accident. It was about as accidental as you can get to. Like, Mick wasn't riding crazy or dodging in and out of traffic, and both of his hands were on the handlebars and all like that. His tire just hit a rock, and he skidded into the back of a passing truck. And that was that. There wasn't a scratch on him. It was a head injury, period. So this isn't the kind of book where you meet the main character and you get to like him real well and then he dies in the end. I hate those kinds of books. And besides, I can't think of anything worse than using my brother's accident as a tear-jerking climax to some tragic story. I don't want to make you cry. I just want to tell you about Mick. But I thought you should know right up front that he's not here anymore. I just thought that would be fair. I'm only 10 months older than he was. I was planned, and Mick was a surprise. He loved it too, being a surprise, I mean. He was always teasing my parents about it, telling them that even before he existed, he could outsmart 2 chemistry majors with birth control pills. Just imagine the amazing stunts I'll pull when I'm a sneaky, rebellious teenager, he'd say. Then he'd rub his hands together and throw his head way back and do that kind of creepy laugh that mad scientists do in movies. You know, like, mwahahaha. And then he'd hunch over and limp out of the room like Igor or something. Mick was excellent at imitating voices, by the way. We have a tape of him yelling, "I'm melting! I'm melting!" that sounds just like the witch just like the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz. Exactly, I mean. But even without playing the tape, I can still remember how he sounded. I've heard that sometimes when people you love die, you forget their voices. But I haven't forgotten Mick's. Not yet, anyways. I have a weird kind of memory, I think. Like, I've never once been able to remember my parents' anniversary in time to buy them a card, but I can still remember the exact conversation I had with Santa Claus when I was in kindergarten. He said, "Ho, ho, ho." I said, "Your breath smells." And he said, "Get down." It wasn't much of a chat. But the point is, it happened 8 years ago and I can still remember it like it was yesterday. That's why it doesn't surprise me that I can remember everything about the fight that Mick and I had 4 weeks ago on the morning of the accident. It started out like most any other school day in our house. My father was running around in his usual morning outfit, a shirt and tie, boxer shorts, and black socks. It's pretty humiliating being related to a man in a getup like that. But Pop never puts on his pants till right before he has to leave for the office. He doesn't like to ruin the crease before he has to, he says. I'm serious. My mother had already left for work, wearing her usual pair of jeans. But I don't think that jeans means that she's more laid back than Pop. All that means is that she works in a research lab doing experiments with viruses, and she doesn't like to spill germs on her good clothes. Both of my parents are totally different from Mick and me. They're real methodical and organized, and everything they do is always technically planned out. Like, my mother never makes hamburgers for dinner without weighing the precise quarter-pound serving on her kitchen scale. And Pop's idea of a daring adventure is to wash his socks without pinning them to their mates. Also, I have name tags sewn in my underwear, and I've never been to camp, which is downright disturbing when you think about it. On top of all that, my parents hate family conflict worse than any parents I've ever seen. Like, my brother and I could hardly even raise our voices at each other before we'd be hustled off to our rooms to think about how we could resolve our differences in a more civilized and resourceful manner. Last year, my mother even made a schedule for me and Mick to follow on school mornings so that we could all start the day without confrontation. It was pretty simple, actually. Mick got the bathroom for 20 minutes while I ate breakfast. Then a timer would go off and we'd switch rooms. At least we were supposed to switch rooms. But every so often, one of us would run late and we'd find ourselves in the same room at the same time. When that happened, we almost always ended up fighting, because, my parents did sort of expect it of us and all, and we really hated to disappoint them. That's why when Mick walked into the kitchen that morning and saw me digging around in a cereal box, he couldn't wait to get something started. The first thing he did was try and grab the box away from me. "What's in there? What are you looking for? Let me see," he says. I held on as tight as I could, and I turned my back to him. "No, get away. Get out of here," I yelled. I couldn't see what he was doing behind me. Couldn't hear him either, which worried me a lot because Mick was always at his most dangerous when he was quiet. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, he came bounding off a kitchen chair and snatched the box right out of my hand. "Hey, give that back. I mean it, Mick. The tattoo is mine." As soon as I said the word tattoo, his eyes opened real wide and he grinned this stupid grin of his. Then he reached right in and pulled it out, no trouble at all. He dangled it in front of my face. It was one of those ugly skull and crossbone pirate tattoos. I should probably mention that I didn't really want the tattoo, but that wasn't the point. The point was I didn't want him to have it, which I happen to think is a perfectly legitimate reason for fighting. It just wasn't fair, that's all. Mick almost always got the cereal toys before me. Then he'd hide them in his room and pretend he didn't know a thing about them. But I know for a fact he had at least 5 Super Balls and 2 pairs of 3D glasses hidden in there somewhere. "Come on, Mick. I want that tattoo. Hand it over." "Say please." "Please, okay? Now let me have it." He tapped his chin. "Gee, I don't know, Phoebe. I hate to be picky, but your please wasn't all that polite. Why don't you try it again? Only this time say, 'Pretty please with sugar on top.'" I swear I could not believe he was doing this to me. "Pretty please with sugar on top. Now give it." But even before I finished, Mick was already shaking his head. "Nope, sorry. Still not working for me. Maybe we should try something different this time. How about this? Try, 'Wee Willie Winkie went to town, upstairs, downstairs, in his nightgown.'" That's when I jumped on top of him and wrestled him to the ground. I realize I'm too old to do stuff like that, but I'm not a bad wrestler, and I'm not quite ready to give it up. Anyhow, I almost had Mick in a headlock when my father walked in on us. Men who walk around in boxer shorts and socks are deceptively quiet, by the way. He didn't yell. Pop almost never yells. Instead, he just folded his arms and gave us one of those looks of his. This was the one where he rolls his eyeballs so far back that in his head that he can see his brain probably. And then he heaves this huge sigh, like having 2 children who fight over a press-on tattoo is a hardship too great for any human being to bear. Trying to save his own skin, Mick jumped right up. "Here, Pop, quick, take this. Phoebe wanted it for herself, but I thought you might like to wear it to the office today." He tried to press it to my father's wrist, but it wouldn't stick to the hair, so he just kept slapping at it. "Boy, they sure don't make tattoos like they did when you were a young lad, do they, Pop?" My father knew that Mick was only joking around, but he didn't lighten up or anything. He just pointed his finger, first in my face and then in Mick's, and squinted his eyes in this silent threat that he does. Then, with that tattoo still hanging off of his hand, he swiveled on his sock feet and padded out of the kitchen. "Yeah, but wait, Pop," I called. "The tattoo was mine. All I was doing was getting it out of the box and Mick jumped on me." My father kept going. "Can I have it back, please?" Pop's bedroom door slammed. I was steaming mad, really fuming. But instead of backing off and letting me calm down, Mick started teasing me in this stupid pirate voice, saying stuff like, "Shiver me timbers," and "Thar she blows," totally cracking himself up. That's when I shoved him into the refrigerator, and I called him a name that I'd never called anybody in my whole life. A really ugly name, I mean. A street word that you mostly hear only on HBO or on school playgrounds. It shocked him when I said it. It shocked me too. But instead of apologizing, I just turned my mouth up into this nasty little grin. Mick pushed me away from him. Hard. "You're cool, Phoebe," he said. Then he walked out of the room. That was our last morning together. The last one ever, I mean. It kills me when I remember that. Because usually I hardly cuss at all. At least not as much as most kids my age, I don't think. Mick didn't either, which is almost weird for a 7th grade boy. Not that the 2 of us were little angels, I'm not saying that. We were always getting into trouble, but normally it was for stuff we did together as a team. Because even though it sounds corny and all, when we weren't fighting, my brother and I actually liked each other. A lot. I think it was a result of being so close in age. Like when Mick was learning to talk, I was the only one who could understand him, so I sort of became his translator. I mean, right from the beginning, I knew that truck meant dog, and Mimi Fluzzit meant he wanted to flush the toilet. The first big caper we pulled together was right after Mick started kindergarten. That was when we defaced our first property. To be specific, We scratched the letters F-A-R-T into the new driveway that had just been poured next to our house. We didn't do it to be bad. It's just that I was learning to spell and Mick was learning to print. And the cement just sort of called to us, I guess you could say. Mick promised that if I would tell him the right letters, he'd do a good job with his printing. And he did too. I mean, his R was backwards, but at the time neither of us knew the difference. All I remember is how excited we both were when he finished. We clapped and jumped up and down and totally laughed our heads out. Without a doubt, this was the funniest thing that anyone had ever done in the history of the universe. It's amazing how a little fart in the driveway can lose its humor when your father sees it. I really don't want to go into all the details of what happened when he discovered it that night, but I will tell you that when he and Mom stood us in front of them and made us solemnly swear to tell them the complete and honest truth about how it got there, Mick swallowed hard, took a big step forward, and told them a monkey did it. Seriously, he said that. The trouble was, I had to back him up on it, and I didn't really have a choice, you know. So I just stood there and swore that we had both seen a monkey run into the driveway with a little stick in his hand and write fart in the concrete. Then, just to make the story even more believable, Mick said that the monkey's name was Zippy, and that the two of us had saved the day by chasing him all the way back to Africa. We ended up going to our rooms for a week or something, I think. But after a while, it became one of those things that everybody looks back on and laughs about. Like, even on the morning of the fight, when I went out the door and saw the backwards R in the cement, I smiled a little bit. I didn't want to, but I did.